Hello everybody and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. And today we are going to be discussing Shadow and Bone Season 2. This is a new season of the Shadow and Bone adaptation by Netflix. And as someone who has read Leigh Bardugo's work, I have some feelings about this season. Before we get started, I should make a note here that I am generally a positive reviewer. I tend to look for the good in everything I watch or read or see. And in case you haven't gotten it by now, I really fucking hated this season. We will get into why, but I did want to go up front that I'm probably going to be pretty negative on this. So, let's get started. For those of you who do not know, Shadow and Bone is a book series. Specifically, it is a part of the Grisha book series by Leigh Bardugo. And this series had 3 books: Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruins and Rising. This original trilogy was then offshoots into 2 different ones: the Six of Crow duology and the Scars of the King duology, I believe. That is because this trilogy is supposed to take place in the front, and then the other 2 series take place in the aftermath of the original trilogy. Now, in the first season, we follow Alina Starkov. She is a Grisha, although she doesn't know it at first. She had hid her powers subconsciously. Grisha are people who can manipulate a single aspect of the world by moving their hands, essentially. You have the Ethereal guy, who can manipulate wind, water, or fire. Material guy can control materials such as metal and glass, and the Corporeal guy manipulate organic, structures in people's bodies. They can stop hearts and hear heartbeats, that kind of thing. Alina is actually a very rare form of Grisha known as a sun summoner, so rare that they are thought to be basically mythical. There is also another semi-mythical type of summoner called a shadow summoner, which there is only 1 and later 2 of these known. Particularly the leader of the Grisha, the Darkling, or they give him the stupid name in Season 1, General Kirkigan. I prefer the Darkling, I think it's more mysterious, but that's just the first of my many gripes with this adaptation. Now, in the first season, we learned about these amplifiers and how they're supposed to be used to control her. Alina, thinks that she's helping the Darkling restore order because there's this huge thing called the Shadowfold, which is the main part of the trilogy to get rid of that because it divided their nation of Ravka in 2. The Darkling's ancestor supposedly did it, but it turns out he did it because he lives way longer than other Grisha, who already live way longer. And Alina finds out, they have a falling out, she manages to break free of his control with the amplifier, and she goes on the run with her childhood friend Mao. Okay, you're basically caught up on Season 1 now. And Season 2 was supposed to follow the plot of Siege and Storm. Because the first season, for all its faults, like dragging in the characters from Six of Crows for a one-off storyline to add some extra dimensions to what was going on, which I didn't entirely hate because I think the actors did a good job of those characters, Shadow and Bone Season 1 was a full adaptation of the first book in the trilogy, Shadow and Bone. This is not that. They attempt to adapt, in order, sort of, Siege and Storms, Ruin and Rising, elements of Six of Crows, and plotlines from Crooked Kingdom, the second book in the Six of Crows duology. They attempted to shove all that nonsense into one season, and it does not work. Essentially, the season's plotline is dealing with the Darkling. He's returned from the Shadowfold with a new ability, Merzust, which allows him to create these shadow wraith monsters called Nichivoya. I actually really like the naming in this series. I will give it credit for that. Despite the fact that they keep talking about Kirkigan, and I thought they were going to switch back to the Darkling. Nope, Davis, don't get dragged down that. We'll be here all day. Deep breaths. So, Alina goes off, and she has to find the other amplifiers. The stag she killed in the first book was just the first of a trio of amplifiers created by this ancient, powerful Grisha called Meretzova. Meretzova's amplifiers could eventually allow her enough power to destroy the Shadowfold and heal the civil war ravaging the nation. So we have the Darkling starting up a civil war, and Alina has to go kill 2 more mythical beasts in addition to the stag. There's the Sea Whip, which is like this big old sea serpent thing, which is actually not that big in this, which I have a problem with too. And also the Firebird, which is like a big old phoenix thing. Now, while they're doing this, we're also following along with a gangster war in the Six of Crows duology back in Ketterdam. So, yeah, there's a lot going on this season, and they try and throw it all into one place. Now, before we get started on my many problems with this season of Shadow and Bone, let us talk about the positives. Because, despite all my complaining, there are some good things here. In fact, I think under a more competent writing staff, this could have been a really good show. Now, the effects aren't that great, but they work for a TV budget, and I'm not going to rag on them too much. Quite frankly, I still think they can be nice at times. However, the best part of this show is the actors. Everyone who they hired, from background actors to playing single roles to the main cast, have a very good grasp over who these characters are, and they act like those characters. When I see the Darkling talking with Alina Starkov, and I'm like, yeah, that's the Darkling and Alina Starkov having their weird thing. If only the writing was better, they're actually really nailing those characters. You actually had Jessie May Lee as Alina Starkov, which is actually kind of interesting. Ben Barnes as the Darkling. Archie Renox as Mal. We had Freddie Carter as Kaz Brecker, and props to Freddie freaking Carter. He nails Kaz Brecker. Amina Suman as Inej Gupta is really good in that character as well. Kit Young is hamming it up as Jesper Fahy. That guy just can do no wrong for me personally. He nails the Cavalier Gunslinger just to a T. Zoe Wanamaker is also doing a pretty good portrayal of Bagra. She did better in the first season, but I think that's just partially just the writing. However, despite all of these amazing actors, the one who just had me going, yep, that's that character, would have to be the actor who is playing Strongham / Nikolai Lantsov. This guy nailed him so hard. There was this moment in the cabin when they go talk to him because they're seeking passage on his ship, and they tell him what they're about to do, and he's like, well, danger, adventure, money? Now you've got my attention. And he's playing up the Strongham character at the moment, and I'm just like, holy shit, that's totally like what he's like in the book when he's playing up that character. Because he has like two alternate personas that he plays of. He's like the prince and also the secret privateer. It's just really cool. I think they did a really good job with these characters and characterizing them, despite the plot being all over the freaking place and rushed to hell and back. I think, in general, the actors and the choices for the roles were made with a lot of care and effort, and the actors are definitely trying their best here. And I'm saying that because I think that if there had been more competent writing staff and directors and people in charge of this, I think this could have been one of the best adaptations Netflix has made. But they did not do that, so here we are. And now we get to the main problem. There's too much stuff. There is too much stuff going on in this show. You cannot fit 2 entire books, bits and pieces from a 3rd book, and elements from a 4th book inside one season of TV that is only 8 episodes long and expect it to run well. You cannot do that. There's not enough time for any of these plot threads to have their impact. And it also means that your budget for effects and battle scenes is spread out across all these different events you have to have play out. One of the reasons I think Shadow and Bone could work really well as an adaptation is that most of the show has 1 or 2 big events per book. There's a lot of political maneuvering and small growth moments, and then they have the big moments. And in Siege and Storms, there's the attack on the Sea Whip, and there is the siege on the Little Palace. Those are the 2 big moments. And if you had had a whole season to build up to those 2 big moments, the first one midway through, the last one of the cliffhanger at the end of the season, prepping for a 3rd season, like they should have done, that would have felt impactful. As it is, the Sea Whip is this tiny little thing that's like 2 or 3 people large. Like, it is tiny compared to the books. Said it was like wrapping around the ship and stuff like that. And in the show, they fight it in like water that goes up to your knees. It is insulting and a disgrace to that cool scene in the books. And then there's the moment where the Darkling, after building up his forces, finally assaults the little palace with the Nichivoya after after the other prince does something really, really freaking stupid and gets them all in trouble. And the Grisha there hadn't just been milling about trying to live their lives. They had been prepping. They built these giant channeling devices for Alina's sunlight. They were basically these giant magnifying glasses they used to sear away the Nichivoya, who are made of shadow. And the Darkling had to send forces to deal with them, because otherwise Alina was going to be overwhelmed with forces, stuff like that. And there were tactical decisions. They had built up their forces. They had prepared for this assault. And in the show, they're just in the middle of a ball. The Darkling shows up with like 2 Nichivoya. 2. Rips apart a few people. Alina fights him, sort of, and then they have a clash with one other Nichivoya that creeps out of the water. She fights it and the Darkling, and then they're both thrown into unconsciousness and leave. There are no real ramifications to either of their powers like there were in the final battle here. Baghra doesn't even freaking die at this point, like she did in the book, spoiler alert. She had this awesome moment where, after all their defenses were overwhelmed in the books, she appears, because the Darkling's her son. We find that out in the last season, so it's not really a spoiler for anyone who's watched the first season of the show. And she approaches and is like, so these are your creatures, son. I tried my best to raise you, but now I shall give these final heroes, these foolish children, a chance to escape. And what she does is she uses her shadow powers to grab all the Nichivoya and throws herself over the cliff to give the others enough time to run. And it's this really impressive scene that climaxes her whole character's arc of regret and the pain and all the horrible things that she's convinced her son to do, and that she blames herself for who the Darkling became. And instead, it has none of that in the little palace attack. And the later scene with that is so dumb, because they just leave Baghra around so she can just tell them the answer to all their questions. And it's just like, why? Why not just make this a 3rd season? I had such hope for this series, because despite my misgivings of the first season, they seemed like they were genuinely trying to recreate the books as a show. They were trying to fully adapt this work. And then the 2nd season felt like, well, we just need to rush it all out. It's fine, we'll just skip over it all. And I'm like, if you're going to adapt this, adapt it. Don't adapt 1 book and then adapt 4 in 1 season. That's not how you do this. So, with that long rant over the writing out of the way, let's move on to a few other more neutral things. I think the directing is fairly fine. There's nothing special or amazing with it, but it's not really that bad. The effects are what you would expect from a TV production. Nothing truly amazing. There was no moment that made me go great. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the Nichivoya's design. I know they were like shadow creatures with impressions of claws, but a lot of the fan art I've always seen has shown them more like the ghostly versions of the Volcra, with wings and stuff. I also was not a fan of the fact that we didn't see Nikolai Lantsov corrupted, because that means we're not going to be able to set up the King of Scars thing. Because the whole thing is that the Scars and the Shadow Monster stuff sets up a lot of the plot of that book, which is disappointing. They're basically just trying to rush straight to Crooked Kingdom, Six of Crows duology, which I can't blame them, because that is the better book, but still, it's a little disappointing. They just want to go straight to their cake. And I think that's basically it. So, in conclusion, Shadow and Bone Season 2 is a disappointment. They took a well-built Season 1 and essentially tried to run through the cliff notes for what I can only see is a decent rush to the bottom line. And I will be talking in the spoiler section about the ending. The ending to this is an atrocity. It completely disregards most of the themes of the story and warps the world of the books in such a way that it's basically just fanfiction. Like, this is absurd. It's outright absurd. So, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 6 out of 10. This is an incredibly mediocre show that's being carried by really good actors, and in general, just butchered its source material. So, yeah. So, now we'll move on to the spoiler section. And I don't have much to say here, but I do have one very important thing to talk about, and it's the ending. I hate the ending. Now, to be fair, I was not as big a fan of Shadow and Bone's ending as I like to believe. I know what I thought about it back then, and I wasn't exactly head over heels with the ending. But the ending was thematically satisfying. In the books, and I know everybody who just wants to hear about the show is really sick of me saying that, but in the books, at the end of the battle, they find out that Mal is the descendant of the human who Merzova turned the Firebird into. He was trying to resurrect his dead daughter, or one of his dead daughters, and Mal is a descendant of hers. That's why he's always been able to track the other two amplifiers. Like calls to like. So they figure it out, and he causes Alina to kill him. He basically commits suicide to give Alina the final amplifier. And Merzova's amplifiers had always been something strange. We had dived more into who Merzova is and talked about him. Bagra was his daughter, which means the Darkling's his grandson. And he was apparently this really powerful Grisha who felt isolated by his strength even compared to his kin. You see that similar thing in both Bagra and the Darkling. He essentially passed that curse down to them. Alina, as a Sun Summoner, is one of the only other Grisha who could ever reasonably be on that same level of power. And he basically made it so if the amplifiers were ever unified like this, their power would rob the individual of their gifts, and it would then create others like them. So Alina essentially martyrs herself, loses her powers, and essentially creates Sun Summoners. Various people around the battlefield begin to shine with an unearthly light, and together, their light banishes the darkness. Basically, the power she and the Darkling have been seeking, that he hoped would rid the world, that he would help him rule the world, and Alina hoped would save the world, was left behind so that other people could take up the mantle and do it for them. And these people are not going to be alone or isolated. They're not going to be dependent on each other. There was this real sense of power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the amplifiers and the martyrdom of Sancta Alina was a way of relinquishing that power. Alina doesn't get upset that she's no longer a Grisha, despite the fact that she's come to terms with it and come to love that part of herself. She accepts the quiet life she kind of always wanted. Mal manages to survive in the end despite the attack, and the two of them essentially go into hiding. The kingdom declares that Sancta Alina died in one final sacrifice to destroy the Shadowfold. The Darkling dies, kind of alone, but also given a bit of peace by Alina in those final moments. She's martyred as Sancta Alina, Saint Alina, and she's allowed to go live her life in quiet. She takes over the orphanage and essentially tries to make the world a better place from the background because she didn't need the power or the fame. And it really pisses me off that they take this character who wanted by nature to live that kind of quiet, happy life in obscurity and says, no, she's actually not going to go with Mal. She's going to, I prefer her with the prince. So she's going to get engaged to the prince halfway through the show. See, and then he's going to marry her. And at the end of the show, she's going to be declared queen. And that's just how things are going to go. And I'm like, and Mal's going to go off and become Strongholm. And I'm like, okay, I could have seen Mal and Alina going off and becoming, pirates. That would have been fun. But, why is she becoming the queen? She hated a lot of this, formal court nonsense. She actively loathed a lot of it throughout the series. And she was sick to death of court intrigue by the end of it all. Even in this one, she seemed pretty sick of court intrigue. It was just why? Why did they make this change? What did it add to the themes of the show? And it's not even just the themes of the story, it was also a lot of the world building of it. Alina throughout the books had always had this kind of hanging bar over her head, because a lot of people had declared her a living saint. And in the world of the Grishaverse, there's kind of a universal thing with saints, and it's that all their saints get martyred. People get remembered for these amazing things they did in this world, but when you look back on their actual myths, you uncover a great suffering and pain. And that's kind of been the whole thing. Everyone who does great things in this world lives lives of misfortune. And the fact that Alina was able to break away from that and just live a quiet, happy life was a big deal. And it just kind of pisses me off because I just don't understand why this change was made. It seems like a change made for the sake of change, or because someone was really wanted their OTP to work. I can't prove there was shipping nonsense involved in this, but it feels like shipping nonsense. I've read enough fanfiction to know shipping nonsense when I see it, okay? And this has the grubby little mitts of someone who wanted to rewrite characters just so they'll be together in the end because they thought they would look really cute all over it. So, yeah. That would be my main complaint. It's just I don't like the ending of the story. It's kind of dumb. It's kind of pointless. I liked Sancta Alina, the martyred saint, secretly goes to live a normal life. I thought that was a cute ending to the series. I thought it was pretty good. And let me make this very clear. I'm not trying to defend my ship. I don't give a shit about the ships. I actually personally think Mal is kind of whiny and annoying throughout both the books and the show. But I'm not going to change the entire ending of the book just to see Alina end up with someone different. That's just how I've always viewed it. But, you know, what do I know? Anyway, with all that said and done, let's move on to the announcements. And hello, it's the announcements. Oh gods, I'm so tired. So, I've just finished up the night prior. I just finished up on Tuesday my playthrough of Hi-Fi Rush. I still need to figure out what I'm going to be streaming. Hopefully I will have something I can put in the, something I can put on screen. That'll be streaming at 7:30 on Thursday, but we'll see. In addition to that, the second book in the Crystal Calamity series by Rachel Aaron came out in January, and I just kind of forgot about it, so that's also on the docket along with The Dragon's Promise. I should have both those out soon. Those are 2 book reviews. In addition to that, I've already mentioned it prior that I have multiple movies coming out that I want to watch. Scream, John Wick, Shazam, and the Dungeons & Dragons movies, so look forward to all of those. And in addition to that, I will try and have a review out for Hi-Fi Rush sometime in the next 3 weeks or so, because good gods, I have so many things to review. There's so much coming out right now, and I'm realizing I missed some stuff earlier when I might have had a bit more free time. Oh, the pain. The pain is real. But I enjoy reading this stuff, and I enjoy telling you guys about it, so look forward to all that soon. Can't wait for you to get into it. So, yeah. Moving on, we have the subscribe orb. Go to the subscribe orb and subscribe to my channel. In addition, you'll find a video YouTube recommends and a playlist of all the reviews this year, so if you want to catch up on what's come out recently, hey, it's a pretty good place to start. See you guys next time. Bye.